I've talked about Star Wars on a couple of podcasts in the past couple of years. One of them was with you. We actually reviewed all of the Star Wars movies back when Solo, a Star Wars movie, came out a little over 2 years ago. So
I remember.
If I can't recall off the top of my head if we sort of recounted these stories at the time, but let's just do the same thing we did for Jaws. Anthony, I know you're a big Star Wars fan. Where did that all start? What was the genesis of that?
It's got to be birth, I think. What I remember, I don't remember the first time I saw it. I don't remember the first time I saw any of them. Episode 3 is the first time I remember seeing Star Wars for the first time because it came out in theaters when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember my mom described to, I think, a relative why me and my brother like Star Wars, because this is all they would show us, because it's kind of perfect for kids. It's got action. There's no gore. There's no swearing. There's no sex. It's a kid's movie, and it's fun and exciting, and it's got cool music, and it's got lightsabers, and it's got Darth Vader, and what's not to like? And then just as I grow up, I continue to watch them, and I don't think it was until maybe Episode 7, The Force Awakens, comes out that I really rewatched them and thought about them as cinema, as film, and that kind of changed my whole perspective of them. And I love Star Wars.
Yeah, it's hard not to love. There's something really comforting. I remember specifically mentioning this on the episode where we reviewed all the movies. There's something about the fact that it is Star Wars, that it is the thing it is, that it is this entity that has impacted the popular culture in such a huge way. Just going back to see them can, in and of themselves, be enough. I think I would say probably up until very recently, my least favorite of them was probably Attack of the Clones, which even that one I find to be somewhat watchable, if only for nostalgia. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think you're about a year older than me, but we're functionally like the same generation. So
yeah,
we definitely, I think we connect to it in very similar ways, although I think your connection might be a little bit stronger than mine was. I think just to go on a tangent I also remember when Revenge of the Sith came out, because it made me really angry that I couldn't go see it because it was PG-13. And of course it was 2005. So I was 6 years old at the time.
Oh, my parents took me.
Oh, good for you, Anthony.
Twice.
I'm sure it was fantastic.
At least twice.
And there's some really heavy stuff in Revenge of the Sith, so I don't actually begrudge my parents whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
But I just remember that so viscerally, just being so mad that I couldn't experience this thing. And so so that meant that the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters was actually the Clone Wars animated movie, which is one of the worst of them all.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah. And so it's weird to think how we first encounter these things in a theatrical setting, but that's a conversation for another time. So when it comes to The Empire Strikes Back specifically, I was honestly in the months and weeks leading up to this, I was actually kind of debating whether or not to even discuss this. You know what I'm saying? Because it is such a popular movie, one of the most talked about of all time. It's often viewed as the best Star Wars movie, and I was just thinking, what can we really add to this? But then I realized, you know what? There's a lot here. There really is. I like what you mentioned earlier about how it's a kid's movie. I would just amend that slightly and say it's a kid's movie, but it knows that it is. And most importantly, it understands sort of how to tap into storytelling and tradition in a way that makes it really exciting, regardless of how old you are. I imagine that I'll still be watching this movie many, many years from now. And I think, wouldn't you say that that's probably likely to happen?
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I ultimately decided, you know what? I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to have Anthony Battaglia on because, of course, I know how big of a Star Wars fan you are. And there are a few things about this movie that really stood out to me this time. And I saw that you also rewatched this one as well, right?
Yes. This is actually the first movie I went to see back in theaters now that they're opening again.
Oh, yeah?
This is the first one I saw. I'm like, well, no better way to get back into it than see it, because it's also it's the only of the original trilogy that I haven't seen in theaters. So now I've seen all the original trilogy in theaters, and it feels so good.
Huh. That's nice. Yeah, I actually have not seen a single one in theaters, so I'll have to
glorious.
Cross that off the old bucket list. Yeah, I saw after we decided we were going to do this episode like a month or so ago, I saw theaters were opening up and they're showing The Empire Strikes Back. I'm like, oh, what are the odds? I bet Anthony will go to that.
Oh, I sure did.
And lo and behold, he did. It is a small world after all. Yeah, that sounds really great. It's I'm surprised that you got a ticket, honestly, because I was looking on websites and I saw they were all sold out.
Yeah, it had to be like a 9 p.m. showing.
Yeah, we live in different areas, so we have different theaters. I just to address it right off the bat, I'm still pretty hesitant to go back to theaters. So, but yeah, more power to you, whatever the case is. And yeah, so I was watching it again, and there are a few things that really stood out to me this time. The first one is the way, and this has been commented on by many before me, but it sort of really solidified in my brain. The way that The Empire Strikes Back changed the idea of a sequel, specifically in its own franchise, but in a lot of other franchises since. You'll notice in every Star Wars movie, which is almost all of them, that's been released since The Empire Strikes Back, not a lot of them have really tried to recapture what the original did, Episode 4. They've really sort of tried to recapture what Empire did in the sense of expanding the understanding of the universe, putting characters in situations that sort of test their limits a little bit, and unraveling the world before us, showing us that there is more to this galaxy far, far away than meets the eye. I was thinking, what is the Star Wars movie that is closest to maybe not recreating, but at least attempting to emulate the sort of, adventure 1930s serial aesthetic of Star Wars Episode 4? And it's probably Solo: A Star Wars Story, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I can see that. I would also maybe guess Rogue One, just because it's set during the same time period as Episode 4 and 5 ish. But yeah, I can like Solo has that kind of gallivanting hero swashbuckling.
Yeah, I could see Rogue One. I think I am a little hesitant on it because of the way that it actually does sort of hold its own place in the Star Wars universe at sort of a high, like it with a lot of gravitas. So that's something from that, like sort of derived from Empire. But yeah, it is definitely that sort of separate adventure kind of thing. I can definitely see the comparison. And yeah, just the way that this movie, right off the bat, we see in the opening crawl, I love it seems so obvious now, but the idea that, okay, we destroyed the Empire's big weapon, they're really, really mad at us, and we have to hide on this secluded planet. And I like how from frame one of this movie, right after the opening crawl, we see them dispatching the probe droids. We see the Empire kind of has this in the bag through and through. Like there's never a moment when the rebellion really gains the upper hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's this has been replicated in various Star Wars movies since, most notably The Last Jedi, which sort of redoes the same basic structure of The Empire Strikes Back, albeit set, I forget what it is, like it's 30 something years in the future.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe 35. I forget the exact number. Someone will correct us in the comments. But yeah, so we see not only is the universe still going strong, like there's more to it than just what we saw in Episode 4, but also the characters just feel different right off the bat, don't they? Like every single time I've watched this, I've made note of that, how there's definitely been some growth off screen here, and maybe I like to think that's the direction, the writing that they chose to really expand the Star Wars universe. Have you ever noticed the way that they sort of feel a little different than they did?
Yeah, I definitely think the addition of Lawrence Kasdan to the writing team was really, really effective in this movie. Like it adds layers to A New Hope in ways that are noticeable but not distracting. Like like you're right, the characters. Princess Leia is so different in this movie than she is. Luke, Han, everybody is so different.
Yeah.
C-3PO is different. It's they're not just being carried over because they're the characters. Every character has a continued purpose, and that's one of my favorite things about it.
The character I noticed more this viewing than any other was actually Chewbacca. And this is the first time in as long as I can remember, really, where I've watched The Empire Strikes Back just by itself. I didn't rewatch episode 4 beforehand. And I'm not exactly sure why, but for whatever reason, that allowed me to see the way that this character has changed. I think we get a lot of really great Chewbacca moments in this movie that only last a few seconds. One of my favorites is when they're like trying to repair the Millennium Falcon at the Rebel base, and he's just like flailing his arms around, trying to, just having no idea what to do. That's life right there. Like that, like Peter Mayhew is really bringing life to that. Another one also in that same sort of sequence is Luke's not back. They're not sure what's going on, but they realize, listen, we got to shut the doors to the bunker. And right as they close, just lets out this scream of, gosh, what I hope I'm in pain right now. I hope everything's okay. Like that's a really ironically humanizing moment of this Wookiee. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, he's a real character. He's not just a sidekick. He's not just a pet, you know, he matters and he's relevant. It's great.
Mm-hmm. He's probably got the most personality in this in Empire of any of the movies. I think he's got some moments in Return of the Jedi, and he's not really that big of a deal in the sequel trilogy. He's just sort of there.
Yeah.
And in New Hope, of course, he's just this sort of fun, furry sidekick creature. So it just goes to show how many times you can watch a movie and things still occur to you. I'm curious, did you happen to have anything like that with this most recent viewing in the theater that something occurred to you for the first time?
Well, mostly just the scale of it. Seeing it on a big screen is different. And I really hope this virus doesn't destroy the theater industry, because I don't want to lose what I got here, because it's so because obviously the action scenes are bigger and glorious and fun, and Luke being awesome in fighting the AT-AT walkers.
Yeah,
it's all glorious, but the smaller moments kind of shine through still in the big screen, and just. For some reason, I just laughed so hard when Leia is insulting Han and he goes, "Who's scruffy looking?" I've heard the line. I know the line.
Oh yeah.
Why did I laugh so hard this time? I don't know. But just for some reason, that interaction, I just almost fell out of my seat. The humor in this movie. It's a funny movie.
It really is.
Han Solo is a funny character, and it's just really there's so much character and personality in this movie.
Yeah, I love the way that actually, in sort of a weirdly similar way, maybe I'm just stretching a little bit, but in a weirdly similar way to the second half of Jaws, where they're on this vehicle, let's just call it, that's just breaking down, and it's sort of a character of its own. The Millennium Falcon in this movie is sort of like it should have been billed in the credits. Like that's how much personality it has. The way it's constantly breaking down, they can't fix anything on it. They keep trying. It really is paying off that line of Luke from episode 4. What a piece of junk. And we finally get to see that in action this time, as opposed to just, the hyperdrive's not working, I'm going to bang on the ceiling and that's going to get it to work. This, we actually get a lot of character out of it. And of course, we know it's literally the spirit of a robot. I don't care about that. That's the Millennium Falcon. One thing, actually a couple things I noticed. On Hoth, when Luke gets taken into the Wampa's cave, I want to know if you've ever picked up on this. So the Wampa sees Luke trying to escape. Luke gets the lightsaber, uses the Force, slices himself down. I still have no idea how he got frozen in the ceiling like that, but I've gone on about that before. And there's this weird moment where he's running out of the cave. You hear the lightsaber retracting sound, but it's still on. Have you ever noticed that?
Yes, I've picked up on a couple of those errors throughout the franchise. Yeah.
In every single version. I was curious if this was just unique to the Blu-ray I had, but I was just jogging through my memory. I'm like, yeah, every single version I've seen, they've screwed that up. It's weird to think with all the special editions and remasterings that they would just remove that one sound effect or make the lightsaber actually retract. That's a tangent, but it's just the devil is in the details, as they say. And then also on Hoth, something that really occurred to me, a couple of things actually, and this is cutting really deep, but it's The Empire Strikes Back, so that's kind of what we have to do at this point, is just really hone in on the details. I was really impressed by the snow speeder effects, in a way that I wasn't before. I don't know if this came across in the theater that you saw it in.
Yeah, definitely did.
It really occurred to me like, oh yeah, wow, this is like, it's the same basic technology as what they were doing with the X-Wings, like on the Death Star and the trench run and everything. But now we're dealing with like landscapes. And so I'm not sure exactly why, but just something about that really stuck out to me. As like, yeah, they really put a lot of effects into it, or effort into it. Those effects still hold up. There's nothing about this movie that's dated, I don't think. And at least effects wise. And yeah, it's just a few things like that. Also, one funny little thing I noticed is the AT-ATs, the big walkers on Hoth. I was racking my brain. Are those the only vehicles in Star Wars that actually touch the ground? I was trying to think of others, and I can't think of one. They all either they hover and maybe they have landing gear or something, or they're just hovering all the time. But this is one of the only ones that doesn't touch, or that does touch the ground. We don't see wheels on Star Wars vehicles a lot, which means that the line that Leia has, where she's like, "What do you want me to do? Get out and push?" That actually doesn't mean anything in Star Wars.
The only other things that I can think of that touch so like there's the AT-ST walkers from episode 6, but then in Clone Wars, some of the droidicas and the big walker spider things, those touch the ground. Right. And there's also some stuff like at that final assault where there's one that has wheels. I forget what it's called, but it's got two giant like tank tracks or something. But other than in the original trilogy, yeah, it's weird. Like it is kind of weird to see like, oh, they have the Death Star and now giant walking things on 4 legs.
Yeah, I feel like a moron right now. I didn't even think about the prequel trilogy. Yeah, I was mostly just thinking about the original trilogy. I was like, wow, this is the only like land vehicle. So weird detail, but I'm glad that we talked it out. And
me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just obviously others have talked about it a lot before, so we won't go on terribly long about it. But I do want to get into a little bit of detail about the characters themselves. There's another moment that I sort of took notice of this time around is after the assault on the rebel base at Hoth, they're flying away and they're like, all right, we're going to go to the rendezvous point. And Luke's like, yeah, the rendezvous point. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. And we see this, it's just this early hint of Luke's irresponsibility, the way that he's sort of rashly making decisions in sort of his own interest, or at least what he thinks is the best interest. And yeah, we see that's what takes him to Dagobah. And it is at this point that I have to acknowledge one thing. So I don't know if you've ever seen it, Anthony, but there's a video on YouTube by a channel that does this thing called bad lip reading. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen what you're talking about.
I cannot ever watch the Dagobah scenes ever again, because back last winter when Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker came out, the theater I worked at, they would play that clip in the opening pre-show every single time. And of course, it was really busy. It was the holiday seasons. We all had a lot of hours. So everyone working there heard that song 40,000 times, to the point where I'm watching these scenes. I cannot even pay attention to the dialogue because I'm remembering, and this is the part where Yoda says, "Penny for your thoughts."
My favorite part of that is like Luke's whining, goes, and I hate Brenda, and then he hits his head on the ceiling. Yeah, that's a funny video.
And a bad guy hit me in the shin, and I peed all over my pants.
Yeah, that is a funny scene.
Nothing a little music can't fix. Yeah, it is this thread that connects anyone who worked at an Alamo Drafthouse at the time. And so I feel the need to acknowledge that yeah, this scene is forever changed in my eyes. But yeah, there's this thing I've always sort of noticed about The Empire Strikes Back that really, this is another thing that really sort of solidified for me this time around as I was sort of trying to think a little bit harder about it. We've seen throughout all of Star Wars history from the very beginning, from episode 4, we have the good guys and the bad guys. Obviously, initially it was the rebellion and the Empire. Then it's like in the prequels, it's the Republic and the Separatists, and then we go to the Resistance and the First Order. Whatever it is, we've seen throughout all of Star Wars history, they're in addition to just sort of their end goal, there's one thing that very specifically separates the good from the bad, and that is the bad guys don't really, how should I say this? They don't really care for their own. And what I mean by that is that we see Luke training on Dagobah, and he gets this vision that, oh no, my friends are in trouble, even though Yoda and Obi-Wan, the ghost of Obi-Wan, profusely insist on, no, Luke, this is not a great idea. You've got to stay here. You're not ready, and you're going to lose, which of course does happen. But it's that insistence on doing literally everything you can about not letting a single life go to waste. The Empire, the villains, just in general, on the other hand, throughout this entire movie, Darth Vader is killing his own men, and we see that in every single iteration of Star Wars. I think it made me think of General Grievous in the Clone Wars animated series, not the one from 2003, but the one that went on for like 7 seasons. General Grievous just murders battle droids left and right. And so it's this really sort of not even subtle, but just kind of understated way of establishing, yeah, this is really kind of what it's all about, is the difference between good and evil is recognizing the value that life has as opposed to pursuing your goal at any cost. And I'm not exactly sure why, but something about watching the way that Darth Vader sort of viciously goes after his goal in this movie, to find Luke and to turn him, to seduce him even over to the dark side. I really got that divide in a way I never have before. And of course, they're using familiar iconography. The Empire in the original trilogy is very clearly like Nazis, you know, as opposed to the allies that are the rebellion. I couldn't say why, but something about watching it this time, I really picked up on that, and I'm sure that you have as well, Anthony.
Yeah, it's pretty night and day between the good guys and the light side, the dark side. Mm-hmm. The way Darth Vader's just willing, you know, hey, Captain Nita, you messed up. I'm gonna kill you now.
Yeah,
you've been promoted, other guy. Congratulations, Admiral.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes that I don't know if it's meant to be funny or not. I would be surprised if it wasn't. It's when they're going through the asteroid field chasing after the Millennium Falcon. There's a shot where there's a Star Destroyer, one of the small ones, and a meteor just crashes into the bridge and blows up the whole ship. And then a guy in a hologram just fades away. And it's like, well, that's the end of that guy. And that's it. That moment has always really been weird to me, the way that this guy just sort of dies and no one really, this entire ship just perishes immediately before their very eyes. And they're like, nope, gotta keep going. And so there's a lot of moments like that where just the way that the dark side just sort of disregards the light side, yes, but also other members of the dark side. This is something that would be addressed later in Revenge of the Sith, the legend of Darth Plagueis the Wise. How, yeah, the Sith is just a long history of apprentices killing their masters. You know what I'm saying? And so to see it all just kind of laid out right here, of course it was in New Hope. We saw that guy whose lack of faith Darth Vader found disturbing. But to see it here in a way more dramatic fashion, Darth Vader
he does it a couple times.
He really does, yeah, and can do it through like the video screen, as it turns out. And yeah, Darth Vader is really mysterious in this movie in the pursuit of this goal that, of course, at the time, if you're watching it, you have no idea why. Like, what is so different about Luke besides that he's, a Jedi in training? And there's just this dramatic flair to Darth Vader that I think is really entertaining and makes is part of what makes him such an iconic villain. The way he has like this big clamshell like man cave or whatever, like the Darth Vader cave with the helmet and everything, and we later find out that he has a fortress in a volcano. Darth Vader has some really dramatic stuff, has a cape for no reason. The list goes on.
Yeah, I love Darth Vader. He's one of my favorite just movie characters of all time. Mm-hmm. And he was cool in episode 4, but in 5, Empire, he is off the wall. Like the level, he just becomes like, I don't know how to describe the difference between him here and in episode 4. Like he's charismatic and he's suave, and the way he talks to Boba Fett and the way he makes deals about like, oh, don't you worry, he'll be fine, he'll be good for Jabba. Don't chill out, Boba.
Yeah.
And then just the way he talks to Luke in their confrontation. It's such a different way, and James Earl Jones gets to shine through in this one. And John Williams added another John Williams score in this movie.
Yeah, that's true.
He added the Imperial March. That wasn't in episode 4. That was in this one.
He adds a bunch of tracks, actually. There's a lot of, like, the Bespin sound effect as they're sort of escaping, and when they're sort of, like, being pursued by the TIE fighters through the asteroid field. That's all new tracks, and it's instantly recognizable, and it's weird to think that they were invented for this movie. And, of course, the same is true for Jedi.
Yeah, John Williams is insane. And then he did it again in episode 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. And I think the sequel trilogy had a little less memorable music, but, that's just...
Yeah.
But like this movie is everything about it just up the ante from episode 4 in the best possible way. Everything, and it's so crazy perfect.
Yeah, I really like it. I think there's a reason why it's considered the ultimate Star Wars movie by pretty much everyone, is because it is. It's got literally everything. There's nothing in almost any other movie, really, with few exceptions, in any other Star Wars movie, I should say, that isn't at least kind of in The Empire Strikes Back. Like, they really, really kind of nailed it the second time out. And personally, it's actually my second favorite. I prefer The Last Jedi a little bit. I think they're equally good, but I consider that a little bit of favorite. For the half of you that have turned this off, including Anthony, I get it. It's a different kind of movie, but I just want to make sure that I address that.
Well, I mean, this is also my second favorite. It's definitely the best, in my opinion, Star Wars movie, but my favorite will always be A New Hope. It's originally just called Star Wars, where they didn't know exactly what they were doing. They were winging it. George Lucas just had some wild, crazy idea that you just had to figure out how to do. And then you go from that to this there's such a clear step up.
Yeah, it's really, really great. Every flaw I have is nothing more than a nitpick. There are a few scenes in sort of a subplot, like in the middle of the movie with Han and Leia and Chewie and C-3PO on the Falcon. It's not that they're bad. It's just I find that they fade out of my memory in between viewings. Like, I just sort of, as I watch it, I enjoy it, but I just don't think about it as much. Not even a complaint, just sort of a thing like, okay, this isn't as iconic and awesome as everything else in this movie. And how have we not mentioned Yoda yet? It's
my God, you're right. We got to talk about Yoda.
Well, we briefly mentioned it with the seagulls.
With the seagull song, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? This actually ties into my recommendation, which I'm just going to give right now. And Anthony, I'm anticipating a guffaw from you, because this is going to be just the most Sam TM recommendation ever. But
I'm ready.
It is Akira Kurosawa's Dersu Uzala.
I knew you were going to say Akira Kurosawa. I knew it. I knew it.
We both got to bring up our favorite director in this movie.
Yeah,
or in this episode.
That's true.
Darcy Uzala, if you do not know, is a movie directed by Akira Kurosawa, one of the greatest filmmakers ever to live, the greatest, I say. Made in 1975 after kind of a rough patch in his career, and it is about a Russian. I forget the exact word for it. I think it may be like cartographer or something along those lines, that has been sent out into the woods of this nation in the early 20th century, in like 1907 or something like that, to sort of chart the land, make maps and stuff, and figure out what's like the ecosystem and everything. And comes across this wanderer in the woods named Dersu Uzala, who is the direct inspiration for the character of Yoda. He is a short, kind of funny looking, kind of funny talking guy who just lives in the woods, lives off the land, has a lot of strangely philosophical things to say, but also behaves very eccentrically, and teaches the character that comes across him a new way to look at the world, and indeed changes his life for the better. It's a really beautiful movie, both visually and also spiritually. I only just saw it recently because I've been listening to this podcast called Star Wars Episode Zero, which is a show where they sort of go back in time and look at all of the movies that influenced Star Wars. And this is one of the very first ones they did, and you watch this movie, you see Yoda immediately, like having seen The Empire Strikes Back and every other Yoda appearance so many times. You really can see how the character was directly adapted from this. So as far as I know, it's only available on the Criterion channel. There's yet to be a sufficient restoration, but if you have it, by all means, check it out. It's well worth it. And I think it's really, really great. And I think you can really learn something about the origin of this iconic character that is Yoda. Anthony, did you have a recommendation to go along with Empire?
So I couldn't think of anything comparable to this at all. So what I did, I thought back to what I said earlier about how it just upped the ante of a sequel in every way possible. So in no way does this movie go along with, like, you're not going to see, oh yeah, I can see the connection. It's Robert Rodriguez's Desperado, which is a sequel to his first movie, El Mariachi, which was famously made for like $7,000. He did it all himself, got him famous, he became known, and he got into all the festivals like Cannes and stuff. And then when he became successful in that way, the studios gave him money to make more, and he made Desperado, which is Antonio Banderas, Selma Hayek, Danny Trejo action movie, very violent, Tarantino-esque. Tarantino's actually in the movie. He has a little cameo because him and Robert Rodriguez are buddies.
Nice.
And this movie is so good. It takes El Mariachi, just kind of this campy, very obviously cheap action movie that like has Robert Rodriguez's cousin playing roles and stuff, and it takes it into a high caliber thriller with emotion and weight and effects, and it's very violent, very fun, action packed. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And it's one of the best sequels, I think, that is ever sequeled. I love it so much.
Nice. You know what? I'm just going to come right out and say it. Robert Rodriguez is actually a rather huge blind spot in my cinematic knowledge. So I actually have not seen Desperado, but I'm very curious to see it now. Especially, I had no idea it was a sequel. I thought it was just its own thing. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's part two of it's. I forget what he calls it. I think he just calls it the El Mariachi trilogy. Part three has Johnny Depp, and it's called Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Yeah, and it's not quite as good, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
And Robert Rodriguez is great. And I'll say the same to you. Kurosawa is a blind spot in my repertoire. So I need to. I've only seen. I think no, I don't think I've seen any of his movies actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to get into those more.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Listen, we all have them. No one can see everything. it's literally impossible. So
Yeah.
we all have our blind spots. It's all about knowing where to fill those in. So I think we both can learn a lot from each other. Anthony, I know I sort of jumped to the recommendations a little bit, but did you have, I know you sort of summed it up a little bit there, but did you have sort of a final word on The Empire Strikes Back that you wanted to give? Like, we didn't mention the ending. If you wanted to mention that quickly, what do you got?
Yeah. When I think back to this movie and what I think it's special, I always think of the Dagobah scene with Yoda, how he says when he pulls the X-wing out of the swamp, and Luke says, "I don't believe it," and Yoda says, "That's why you fail." I think the training sequence is so beautifully done, and Yoda is such he's wacky and silly, but he's such a real character, and it's really interesting how you can take him seriously when he's literally a puppet.
A Muppet,
and then yeah, it's just Frank Oz with his hand up a Muppet. It's great. And the other thing I'll say is the ending. Darth Vader and Luke's lightsaber battle is my favorite lightsaber battle. Yep. I love it. It's always striking to me how beautiful it is. The lighting of the blue around them, and then the orange kind of like tiles shining up, like it's intense, and it's much more fast paced than the Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight.
Yeah, that one's always funny to me.
I agree. It's kind of jarring, the difference. And then you watch something like Duel of the Fates with Darth Maul, and it's like, wow, technology is crazy. But like that fight scene is just, I don't know why, but I love it. I think Darth Vader shines, and he's menacing, and he's scary, and you're scared for Luke, even though you know Luke's the good guy, and he's not going to die here. But Darth Vader is so overpowering. And I want to know what you think of the twist, the big twist, the "I am your father" twist. Because I don't even remember what my thinking was when I first saw that. So what did you think of that?
I actually don't remember either. It was just that thing where I saw it at such a young age that I wasn't paying attention to the plot in such a way that would really have the intended effect. And so I'd actually be very curious if there are any listeners out there who were who saw this in the theater when it first came out. I'd be dying to know what was that like, because I've heard stories, but I would love to hear another firsthand account.
Because that's kind of been a trope lately. Like the secretly the villain and the good guy are related somehow. Like most recently, I can think of the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie where, oh, it's his daughter, and I'm like, oh, jeez, that is ridiculous. But was this the first one to really take it to that level? What was the reaction? Were people genuinely shocked? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another movie that came before it where it had that kind of twist. Nothing's coming to mind. I'm sure there was precedent, but this one is really the one that has lingered to this day. And
Jaws was Quint's father.
Jaws was the shark fathered this man.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, and I'm gonna echo everything that you said about that lightsaber fight, especially in contrast. I was thinking about that. What are the best lightsaber fights? And I think it's Duel of the Fates. It's Anakin versus Obi-Wan at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Oh yeah.
It's this one, which is number one. I'm a fan of the Rey and Kylo Ren versus all the guards after killing Supreme.
That was a good one.
I really like that one. And it's not much of a fight, so I don't know if it qualifies, but I am a huge fan of Luke versus Kylo Ren. I just think it's a beautiful ending. I know you have your problems.
Oh, I hate that ending, but I won't go there yet.
We've talked about it before,
yeah. It's crazy the way these fights progress throughout all the movies. It's beautiful, and it's crazy how they do it.
Yeah, I think the close sixth place is the Luke versus Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. That's a great one. Especially in contrast with this one where Luke is so overpowered, and now it's kind of the other way around. So, yeah, come back in 3 years. We could talk about Return of the Jedi for the 40th anniversary.
Oh, I will.
I know exactly where to come on. Actually, probably in 2 years, because New Hope. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, we've gone on and on. Just last thing I'll say is, again, just the ending of this movie, the way that the Empire strikes back and wins. I just love it so much. The way that it's not this huge tragedy, the way it's like, it just understands like, yep, we lost this. There's more to this than we thought. The war is only just beginning. And I just love that final shot looking out at the stars. It's really, really great. And I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, the last moments are really special. And Lando's, we haven't even mentioned Lando. He's so back much in the Falcon and he's with Chewie, and they're like, we're gonna go get Han. And it's it's a beautiful ending.
It's really great. We could go on and on and on about this movie.
Yeah.
And and it's not even the first time we've talked about it. So that's just goes to show how much there is to explore in a galaxy far, far away.